Hello basketball coaches and basketball players, my name is Alan from Al's Basketball Training, and today I'm going to talk to you about how you can run a basketball practice and how you can organize your basketball practice plans. So hello everyone, my name is Alan from Al's Basketball Training. On this channel I show you basketball plays, drills, and skills. So if you like that stuff, hit that like button and subscribe. But anyways, today I am going to talk to you about basketball practice plans, how you can organize your basketball practice, and how you can make your team a lot better overall. So to start, it depends on what you want your team to focus on and also how long your basketball practices are. So how I like to explain it is, basically, you would be looking at an overall percentage, call it 100%. Some basketball practices are 1 hour, some are 2 hours, and very rarely, or at least up here in Canada, very rarely they go 3 hours. I've only seen a few 3-hour practices, and usually it's a high school basketball team that is going into the playoffs, and usually 1, 2, or 3 practices before, they will have a 3-hour practice just to get 100% ready for the playoffs because, as you know, everyone wants to win. So, if we were to look at 1 or 2 hour practices, how I would look at it is to look at the overall time. So, 20% I always like at the end of the season, 15 to 20% of the practices is going to be around the plays. You always have to practice plays. You might want to incorporate something new against a certain team because maybe that certain team you're playing against next week is going to be super tall, you're super small, so you might want to run a few plays or teach your team a few plays that will be able to incorporate something to beat that team. And then there's other times where you just want to basically run your practice, get better at certain skills, but still practice your plays because practice makes perfect. During the season, I would be looking at 15 to 20% of your time is going in towards plays. While maybe at the beginning of the season, you might be looking at 50% of the time going towards basketball plays because your team might be just learning the plays for the first time. So you want to really give more time towards the plays maybe near the beginning of the season and then work on skills later on. The other benefit towards doing something like this is now in your first 2 to 3 weeks of having your team, you can now see what your players are strong with, what your players are weak with, and then you can kind of engage your practices on what they're strong and weak with. So if you've got a team that's really strong against shooting the ball, but maybe not so strong against defense or dribbling the ball, maybe you can incorporate after 2 to 3 weeks more dribbling and defense drills than shooting drills. So that's how I like to personally run my practices. So in the first 10 minutes of the practice, I like to do warm-ups. Now warm-ups, some coaches will just say, hey, run suicides and have fun. I don't. I personally don't like suicides by just running. Suicides are great, but only if the players have basketball. When you're doing a warm-up, you never want to do anything without the basketball because for one, that's a great time to learn dribbling, and for two, that's going to be also warming up and getting used to the basketball. So we've all seen Steph Curry before every game. He's along the baseline, dribbling the ball, doing some different dribbling moves. That's because he's warming up that way. So that's how I like to warm up my players. Personally, I like to run suicides, but with a basketball. Every time you're going down to the court, right hand, coming back, left hand. When you get to that free throw line extended, when you get to half court, full court, all of that, you want to have them either dribble the ball behind the back, through the legs, something like that to switch hands. You don't just want to have them turn and dribble back. You want to have them stop on a dime, hop into their stop, and then go the other direction. That's how I like to have my team practice because it's more closer to a game situation. And that's what you always want to try and incorporate is what the game is going to be like. Now, after the warm-up, I always like to run 2-ball basketball dribbling drills. That is just something I like to run. If you don't have enough basketballs, maybe get them into a few different lines. So maybe if you've got 12 players, 6 lines of 2, and then that way they each have 2 basketballs, and you can get them doing different things going down the court and back. So you can go 2 balls at the same time, you can go opposites, you can go one high, one low, things like that, so that they can get their hands warmed up. And then I usually get into some kind of 3-on-2, 2-on-1 drill to still warm them up even more. Now this is all within the first 20 to 25 minutes of the practice. Generally my practices, I've never had a 1-hour practice as a basketball coach. I've always strived to have 2 hours or longer. I always 99% of my practices have always been 2 hours. So this is why I'm giving you the 20 to 25 minutes, because that would be a good warm up for a 2-hour practice. It's about 10% of the time, going back to the percentages. But basically, going from there, we would go into what we want to focus on for the next whole hour. So, what we always like to focus on, I always like to have a theme in practice. So it's going to be either shooting, dribbling, defense, or something along those lines. Maybe you might need to work on your transition game. Maybe they're getting the rebound and just dribbling down the court doing nothing in games, and instead you want them to get the rebound, outlet, get down the court, set up your offense, or maybe even get a fast break, couple of points. So I always like to run a team that is good on the press, not on the press break. I like to run a team that's very good on shorthanded situations where they can get that defensive rebound and get down the court as quick as possible. So rebound, turn, outlet, go, that kind of thing. I always like to have my teams run that. So let's go over one of those drills right now. Okay, so here we have a 3-on-2 drill. Now this is a drill that you can run to get a quick, fast break. And basically what we are going to do here is have the coach pass to one of these 3 players. Once he passes to one of those 3 players, if he passes to, let's say, a player along the sideline, that player needs to fill the middle. The middle player needs to fill out to the side, and then this player along the side is going down the court. So it's going to be 3 players going down the court on offense. If the coach passed to this player, now, this player here who is guarding player 4, he needs to then run to the baseline and then get his butt back on defense. So it's 3-on-2 until he gets back. Of course, there's only going to be one shot that is going to be made or taken. And then once they get down to the court, so if player 4 is filling, these guys are running down, it's going to be 3-on-2 until player 1 gets his butt back on defense. One shot only. Once they get down here, once they're finished, they're going along the sideline. Of course, I only have 10 players in the court. There would be another player ready here and another player ready here so that they can fill in while these 6 players get back on defense. If, for example, the ball goes to the middle, if the ball goes to the middle, like if it's an offensive rebound, so a defensive rebound, if the coach passes the ball to the middle player, we want him to pass to one of the sideline players who are going up the sideline. They're going to fill the middle, and it's going to go down 3-on-2 again. Or what we can have done is, and you can of course let your players know what we're looking for, is player 1 gets that ball, he's looking for player 4, or either one of these players, whoever, it doesn't matter. If he passes to player 4, he needs to of course fill his spot. Meanwhile, player 2 is going up the middle. Player 4 is going to pass to player 2. Player 4 is then going to go and follow his pass, sort of like the 3-man weave. And now we're coming down 3-on-2 again. But meanwhile, we have now taught our players, if the ball is on the sideline, or you got your outlet pass essentially, and you were passing out to the middle, or you got your rebound near the basket, which is where the coach passed the ball to, you're going to outlet pass. Meanwhile, there's another player who's moving up the middle of the court who's going to be most likely faster, and he's going to then pass to the middle of the court and follow his pass and get up 3-on-2. Now, this is just proper offense, or at least in my mind, proper offense. So this is why I really love this drill. I'm not going to lie. And if I have any past players who watch these videos, comment below. We basically ran this drill 85% of the time. Like 8 or 9 out of 10 practices, we ran this drill for at least 5 to 10 minutes. Now, that is one of the drills that I like to run for transition basketball. So if you wanted to focus around transition basketball, that is definitely one of the drills that you should run. But going from there, if you wanted to work on dribbling, let's say, or even defense, dribbling and defense, oddly enough, go together really well. So in dribbling and defense, you can quite literally have a zigzag drill for a little bit of time. On the way back, you could go one-on-one. There's a few different types of situations. You could go 2-on-1 on the way back and zigzag 1-on-1 down. There's a few different options there, but defense and dribbling generally go together. Now, if you're trying to teach your team how to run defense in a full court pressure kind of way, I'm going to show you in a few seconds a drill that you can use with your team. But again, that is another option where you can spend an hour on teaching them how to run a press defense. So here's a drill that you can run right now with your team if you wanted to run a press defense oriented practice plan. So we're going to have 3 lines. We're going to have a player 2 line, player 1 line, player 5 line. And then from there, what we are going to have is, of course, these players over in this corner that you see, they're going to be in their lines. I just wanted to get them out of the way to make this drill super clear. But for defense, press defense, we're going to have these 2 players as defense and this player as our offensive player. Now what's going to happen is player 2 and player 5, they are going to make the decision at first who is going to be the one pressuring the defense and who is the one going to be leading or pressuring the offense, who is going to be the one leading the offense. So what I mean by that, we want to try and trap this player right here. We don't want this player to go past half because we're going to be running the same drill going back in this direction. So if you want, you can have pylons down to the court. It's up to you, but we don't want them to go down center court. So basically what we're going to have is player 2, he is going to be the one directing player 1. He is the one going to be moving player 1 in the direction that the defense wants player 1 to move in. Meanwhile, player 5, the secondary player, so essentially this is going to be just a zigzag drill. But what we have player 5 for is for him to make sure that player 1 doesn't do a reverse spin. He is there to stop that. So once player 1 gets to that sideline, and if he made it there, meanwhile player 5 is playing behind the play, player 1 is going to try and spin, and player 5 is going to try and cut him off. We're going to try and this way we can pressure the defense. We can teach our team how to pressure pressure the offense for the defense to be successful. So then if he spins, player 5 is now going to be the one directing, and player 2 is going to be the one behind the play stopping the spin to get down the court. So now player 5 is in the zigzag drill until player 1 gets to that pylon line where now he's going to spin off. Player 2 is going to cut him off, and now player 2 is going to then pick up where player 5 left off. This is a great drill to teach a 2-player defensive game up in the front court so that now you can cut off any kind of offense that is coming down the court. You can quite literally run just a 2-1-2 full court zone, and by teaching this drill, you're essentially teaching these 2 spots in the court for you to be able to then use the full court to your advantage. If you want, you can even run this on the full court. Now to run this on the full court, same idea. You're going to be having your players line up right here. Player 2 is then going to go and cut off player 1, and then what we will have is player 5 picking up the slack, so that player 2 is going to be directing player 2 or player 1 towards the sideline. Once they get to that sideline, of course they're going to be running, they're not going to be going this slow. Player 1 is going to want to then reverse and go the other direction, but player 5 is going to cut him off, and he's going to be then directing him towards that sideline. Now, if player 2 thinks, oh, maybe I'll cut him off to try and trap him, well, player 1 at that point can then just spin and go down the court and score, and that's going to teach them that that would be a mistake. So, of course, this is a great drill. You can run this with up to a ton of players. So, personally, let's get different colors on. Up to 5 players, red being defense, blue being offense, and then what we would have is player 3 directing, player 4 and 2 popping up, so that now when player 1 gets moved towards the sideline and player 2 cuts him off, player 4 is going to be then watching the cross-court pass plus watching the spin move this way. And then if the ball does go over to player 3, player 4 is going to cut him off. Player 3 is then going to be directing player 3 blue to a certain direction as well. And then what we will have is player 2 watching the cross-court pass plus the spin move. So this is another drill that you can run as well. So on a 2-hour practice, I always like to focus on 1 hour of what you're trying to focus on, either being dribbling, offense, defense, something, rebounding. There's many different options for that 1 hour. In the first 20 minutes on a 2-hour practice, I would be looking at warming up, either doing like a 3-man weave or something to do with dribbling, or at least something to do with the basketball. Don't just be doing blind sprints, because that's just not teaching anything other than cardio. And even at that point, cardio, are your players really doing that off the court? Who's to really know? But at least if you're doing cardio in practice, you're also getting some basketball skills down as well at the same time. And then at the end of the practice, so I would say the last 20 to 30 minutes, you're focusing on your actual plays, depending on if you're at the beginning of your season or at the end of the season. So on average, 20 to 40 minutes. And then the rest of the 10 to 20 minutes is just filler, where you can be talking to your team about what you're going to run in practice, what you're going to be running in your next game, who you're going to be playing against, some kind of strategies that can teach your team, or maybe even getting some information from your players as to how they are feeling, which is very important, but also getting some information from them on what they would like to focus on in the future. So you could do that as in a team aspect, or you can do that one-on-one with your players as well. I always like to go every once a week, or at least every other week, one-on-one with a player to see how they're feeling about the team, and also how they're feeling about their individual development. Because as we know, every single player wants to get better and wants to get more playing time. And when you get better, you get more playing time, and yeah. Anyways, I hope that you have enjoyed today's video. If you have, hit that like button and subscribe. Up in this corner is a subscribe button, and up in that corner is a video that YouTube is suggesting for you.